What if I told you that one of the most crucial moments in Star Wars history happened off-screen, in a conversation between two Jedi Masters that would reshape the entire Order's future? Qui-Gon Jinn's Force didn't just return to teach Yoda about immortality. He came back with a warning, one that cut to the very heart of why the Jedi failed. And when you understand what he said about the Council, suddenly everything about the prequels, the Clone Wars, and Order 66 clicks into place. Let's talk about why a dead Jedi Master told the Grand Master of the Order, "Don't trust the Council you've led for centuries." So here's what actually happened. At the end of Revenge of the Sith, Yoda goes into exile on Dagobah. But according to the novelization and expanded universe materials, this isn't just a retreat. It's a pilgrimage. Yoda goes there specifically because Qui-Gon's Force Ghost has been communicating with him, teaching him the technique of retaining consciousness after death. Now, the films show us Yoda mentioning this to Obi-Wan, but what they don't show is the content of those conversations. The Clone Wars animated series gives us glimpses, and the novels fill in the gaps. And what emerges is fascinating. Qui-Gon essentially tells Yoda that the Jedi Council had become so detached from the living Force, the energy of life in the present moment, that they'd become blind. They were so focused on protocol, politics, and ancient dogma that they couldn't see what was right in front of them. A Sith Lord literally became Supreme Chancellor, and they sat in meetings with him for years without sensing it. But here's the thing. Qui-Gon wasn't being bitter. He was being honest, and Yoda, to his credit, listened. Remember how Qui-Gon operated in the Phantom Menace? He was constantly at odds with the Council. When they said Anakin was too old to train, he insisted. When they wanted to wait for Senate approval, he acted on instinct. Obi-Wan even calls him out. "You'd be on the Council if you just followed the code." And Qui-Gon's response? A knowing smile. Because he didn't want to be on the Council. This wasn't rebellion for rebellion's sake. Qui-Gon believed in something the Council had forgotten, trusting the will of the Force in the moment, not the will of tradition. The Council had become reactive instead of responsive. They analyzed threats through the lens of politics and past precedent. Qui-Gon felt the Force flowing through the present. Think about how the Council handled Anakin. They sensed fear in him and said, "Too dangerous to train." Qui-Gon sensed fear in him and saw a boy who needed guidance. The Council saw a threat to manage. Qui-Gon saw a child to save. Both were right, in a way, but only one approach had a chance of preventing Vader. The Council's mistake wasn't their assessment, it was their certainty. They'd become so confident in their wisdom that they stopped questioning whether their wisdom was still wise. In Attack of the Clones, there's this incredible moment that everyone overlooks. Mace Windu straight up tells Padme that the Jedi's ability to use the Force has diminished. He admits they're weakened. But then what does the Council do? They hide it. They don't investigate why. They just keep pretending everything's fine. This is exactly what Qui-Gon warned against. The Council had become more concerned with appearing infallible than with actually being effective. They were playing politics when they should have been seeking truth. And here's where it gets really interesting. According to several Star Wars novels, including Master and Apprentice, Qui-Gon had tried to raise these concerns when he was alive. He'd questioned why the Jedi were serving as generals, why they were so embedded in Republic politics, why they'd become enforcers of government policy rather than guardians of peace and justice in a more fundamental sense. The Council's answer? This is the way it's always been. Except it wasn't. Earlier Jedi Orders operated differently, but the current Council was so invested in their structure that they couldn't see they'd become part of the problem. Dooku left the Order for similar reasons, and while he fell to the dark side and became everything he opposed, his initial critique wasn't wrong. The Jedi had become tools of a corrupt republic, not independent agents of the Force. Palpatine wasn't subtle. He was manipulating galactic events, engineering a war, consolidating emergency powers, every classic dictator move in the playbook. And the Jedi? They sat across from him in meetings. They advised him. They reported to him. Qui-Gon's Force Ghost perspective on this must have been devastating, because from outside the institutional blindness, it was obvious. The Council was so caught up in fighting the war, maintaining their role as Republic servants, and following proper procedure, that they couldn't step back and see the pattern. In the Revenge of the Sith novelization, there's this haunting moment where Yoda reflects on the Jedi's failure. He realizes that the Order had become convinced that the dark side couldn't touch them if they just followed the rules carefully enough. They'd mistaken rigidity for strength. Qui-Gon understood something crucial. The Force doesn't care about your bureaucracy. The dark side doesn't fight fair or follow your protocols. By making themselves predictable through strict adherence to Council doctrine, the Jedi had made themselves vulnerable. So what makes this story so powerful is Yoda's response. After 900 years of leading the Council, after being the embodiment of Jedi wisdom and tradition, Yoda listens to Qui-Gon and says, "You're right." That's humility on a scale we rarely see, and it's why Yoda goes into exile, not just to hide from the Empire, but to strip away everything the Council had become and reconnect with the Force itself. On Dagobah, there's no Council, no politics, no protocols, just Yoda and the living Force. And when Luke shows up 30 years later, who does he meet? Not Council member Yoda. He meets Qui-Gon's kind of Jedi, living in the moment, trusting instinct, challenging Luke to think rather than just obey, and ultimately encouraging him to do exactly what the old Council would have forbidden: feel attachment, love his father, and trust his emotions. The scene in Return of the Jedi where Yoda tells Luke, "Pass on what you have learned," isn't just about Force techniques. It's about passing on the lesson Qui-Gon taught. Don't let wisdom become dogma. Don't let tradition become blindness. Qui-Gon's warning to Yoda wasn't about distrusting specific people. It was about distrusting any system that stops questioning itself. The Jedi Council failed because they were too certain, too rigid, too convinced of their own righteousness. And in the end, it took a maverick Jedi who died following his instincts to teach the oldest living Jedi Master the most important lesson: wisdom without humility is just arrogance in robes. The Force will always be with you, but only if you're actually paying attention to it. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think about Qui-Gon's philosophy versus the Council's approach, and may the Force be with you.